There are three words that every buyer needs to know, hear me out, before they sign a contract. This is important because they're all part of a contract. And if a buyer goes in and signs a contract without really understanding these three words, they could really mess themselves up. So let's talk about the three words the buyers need to know before they sign a contract. The first one is earnest money. And earnest money is just the money that the buyer is going to give the transaction as soon as the contract is agreed upon by everybody, as soon as it's ratified. So when that contract is ratified, they've made an offer, the seller has said yes, or they've countered and they've said yes, whatever that looked like. When they come to an agreement, there's going to be money that the buyer needs to give to the transaction that is part of the transaction right up front as good faith, saying, yeah, I really am going to buy this house. That money is negotiable. So it could be $500. I've seen it as high as $100,000. It really depends on what kind of market you're in, what type of house you're buying, what the situation is to try to sweeten the deal. You get the idea. That earnest money, as long as you fully go through the transaction and you close, that money is going to be part of your money needed for closing. So it's not extra money that you're having to pay. It's just paying up front for some of the money you will need in the transaction. Now, number two word is contingency, and it ties very closely to earnest money. And contingency is just the points in the contract that the buyer has the right to renegotiate and or back out of the contract without losing earnest money. So this is important. If you have a large sum of earnest money that you're giving, you want to make sure that you have the correct contingencies in the contract. A contingency might be something like, my house has to sell prior to close. That's a big deal, and that happens pretty regularly. So contingent on my house selling, that's a contingency. Another contingency would be your inspections or appraised value. These are optional. The contract doesn't have to have contingencies. So you want to make sure you are protecting yourself with the correct contingencies based on your offer. And your local realtor will definitely help you with this. Also, there's going to be contingencies for interest rate, contingencies for money down that you have to have, monthly payment, all of those things. These are all part of the contract that are contingencies, meaning if something in them changes, it is a point that you can go back to the seller and you could negotiate something to make it better, and or you could back out of the contract at that point. So they are negotiation points. The third word that you really need to know before you write the offer is closing cost. And the reason I say that, you need that before you write the offer. I cannot tell you how often I get a buyer that we've talked about the seller needing to pay closing costs, but they just forget when you're in the moment. But there is a section in there that if you want your seller to be negotiated to pay closing costs, you have got to do that right up front. So make sure that you are very aware of what your closing cost estimate is. Know if you are prepared to pay that out of your own money or if you need that to be negotiated into the contract. So make sure that you have addressed and know where the money is coming from and who is paying it. It doesn't automatically get paid for by the seller. You have to negotiate that if you want the seller to pay your closing costs. Those three things are super important as a buyer to make sure that you are putting the right things in the contract to protect yourself and make sure you have the right cash to close. It happens regularly that I get somebody that doesn't realize they didn't put their closing cost in and now their cash to close has gone up $7,000, $9,000, $10,000, $15,000 depending on the loan type and what they have going on. So make sure you talk with your lender before you go under contract to ask what those closing costs should be, and make sure that if you are going to need the seller to pay for some or all of them, you get those negotiated as well. Now remember, if you are a lender or a real estate agent or real estate professional and you want to make this content for your social media, I'm here to help. Go to the rechargingwithchampions.com website. That is the website that accompanies this YouTube channel. Under the members area, you are going to find scripts. This is going to be under the September scripts. Just go check it out and get the script. If you want to put it in teleprompter app and use the teleprompter to do the actual video, fine. Or just read it, get the idea, and put it in your own words. But the bottom line is, use this information to go out and be a guru in your market. Go be the voice that your clients hear so that they know when they're going to buy a house, the three words that they need to know. All right, we'll see you next time.